Hello, I am Fabiola Costa, Corporate Fundraising Officer at UNICEF. Welcome to Oky's journey in Mexico. For us, the key word has been teamwork. Oky is for SCT and UNICEF the great bet to bring a safe space for information and menstrual management that millions of girls, adolescents, and menstruating people in Mexico are looking for. I am pleased to introduce David Casillas, CEO of Big Spring, implementing partner for the co-creation and tailoring for Oky Mexico. Over to you, David.
Thank you, Fabi. Well, to begin with the implementation of Oky, we first wanted to know the perspective of girls in Mexico about menstruation. So we developed a co-creation workshops to ensure that the user interface, user experience, and content of the application was appropriate and useful for the users. In order to visit these workshops, a call was launched to anyone interested in these topics. The requirements to participate were age between 10 and 20 years old, internet access, and select 3 topics in which they would like to participate. With these 6 groups of 10 members each, we created this workshop. The topics addressed on these workshops were family planning, puberty, nutrition, health and exercise, menstruation and periods, menstrual hygiene, mental health, gender identity, my rights, and violence and harassment. In all of these workshops, the structure of the session was welcome the participants, introduce them to Oky, and finally show them the prototype of the application. Then the topics of menstrual hygiene were presented in a questionnaire, and finally, with the co-creation parts, where the participants mentioned what modifications they would like to make to the application. Through these sessions, we noticed that the participants were more interested in the topics of the session and the contents of the application than the UI and UX. This was due to lack of information about menstrual hygiene, and the products and these topics were also considered taboo in a lot of families in the country. The participants who had the least information regarding menstrual issues were girls in the range of 9 to 15 years old. For these reasons, the sessions were very enriching as these girls were very participative. In addition, through this session, they presented definition and concepts that they consider useful to add to the application. After the workshops, one of the observations we obtained regarding the application was that it contains so much text. So it was recommended to present the information in a more summarized, less repetitive way, with more order using images, infographics, videos, and animations. It was suggested to add a space for notifications where a daily motivational message, curious data, important information, standardization of products, etc. could be sent. Also add sanitary supplies such as menstrual cups and put instructions on how to use the tampons, pads, and menstrual cups, as well as tips to know which one is more convenient depending on your body or for ecological reasons. So thank you. Back to you, Fabi.
Thanks, David. Those were certainly great discoveries. Oky Mexico was born under the partnership between SCT and UNICEF called Hygiene is Our Right, which aims to promote environments conducive to health and hygiene for children in schools, strengthen mechanisms for participation with a gender perspective, and the generation of a social and behavioral change to break barriers around menstrual poverty in the country. According to a study by UNICEF and SCT, only 6% of girls and adolescents have correct information about menstrual hygiene, while 43% miss school during their period. Therefore, Oky seeks to be a content tool that can break these information gaps and generate optimal environments for all girls, adolescents, and menstruating people. The Girl Talk, which led to the launch of Oky in Mexico, was an event where this teamwork was shown. Participants included teenagers from the School of Leadership, teenagers from U Report, the marketing director of SCT, and one of the most recognized young actresses and influencers in the country. This event was virtual and reposted on the social networks of SCT, UNICEF, and U Report. It has been thanks to the support and trust of our partner, SCT, the enthusiasm of U Report, and the commitment of our implementing partners, Spring and Magenta, that we have begun to consolidate Oky's presence in the country. This leads me to introduce Ana Cecilia Campos, Magenta's Latin America and Africa Program Manager, to tell you about Oky's next step in Mexico. Over to you, Ana.
Thank you very much, Fabi and David, for the presentation. Very interesting insights and information. So once Oky was launched, the next step was to design a communications campaign strategy to promote the app. And this is when Magenta came in. We're a social and behavioral change agency, and for this project, we designed a communication strategy that aimed at understanding the barriers to utilizing the app. Using the socio-ecological model that you can see on your left, we asked relevant questions such as, what are the cultural, social, and psychological barriers around menstruation in Mexico? And how can we address them through the development of messages that respond to this? For this purpose, we designed an outreach strategy that considers the different levels of the model. For example, social media posts that are directed specifically to the girls and their needs to learn more about menstruation. We're also working with community voices that we consider to be very influential for girls and adolescents. And finally, through inviting other relevant institutions to participate in the campaign, such as schools. Here are some examples of the visuals that we created to promote Oky in social media. All of these messages take into consideration the previously identified barriers and social norms around menstruation. Following the EAST model of SBC communications, the key idea is to share messages that are easy, attractive, social, and timely. The aim is to promote the normalization of menstruation around girls, adolescents, people who menstruate, and community members, which then leads to the interest to then download Oky. The communications campaign has recently been launched, but we're already thinking ahead. What comes next for Oky Mexico? Again, we want to ask relevant questions, such as, what can we learn from the experiences of Oky in other countries? We've engaged in previous conversations with Oky Indonesia, for example, where we learned that online outreach is not enough. This is where human connections are very relevant. And we are also asking, how can we make our campaign more accessible? We produced 2 animated videos to promote Oky, and we've decided to include subtitles in these videos in order to make sure that people that are deaf can engage with the content that we produce as well. So it is relevant to keep asking all of these questions in order to make sure that we're reaching everyone that can use Oky. And finally, how to reach and engage with more Oky users. To this and for the future of the campaign, we're planning different activities. For example, we want to produce very creative content in collaboration with community voices that have an impact in the way that girls and adolescents perceive menstruation. So thank you very much, Fabi, for this opportunity. Over to you.
Thank you, Ana. It has really been a pleasure. We still have a long way to go for Oky Mexico to be one of the main tools in the movement for a dignified menstruation in the country. But listening to the experiences and best practices in other countries has been really useful for us. Thank you for your interest in Oky Mexico. See you soon.